But just by way of introduction, I have been working on the Microsoft Dynamics GP product in one way, shape, or form for almost 27 years. In fact, it's just over 27 years 2 days ago. So, as part of my career, I had the opportunity to work in Australia for 2 years. Myself and my wife both work at Microsoft, and we had the opportunity to spend 2 years in Australia in the Sydney area, and loved it. That's why I sort of keep in touch with everybody over there, and Michael Channel asked me to present to you today. And so again, what I'll be sort of covering off is some of the new things that have arrived in Microsoft Dynamics GP in the last couple releases. I'll go over those in some detail, show you some things about the integration of Microsoft Dynamics GP and some other Microsoft products, and then also just sort of leave you with some thoughts on what's coming down the road for Microsoft Dynamics GP in the near future. So think in sort of the next 6 to 9 months, some things that we'll be doing with Microsoft Dynamics GP also in the future. But to sort of frame this whole conversation up, I thought I would start by talking a little bit more broadly about Microsoft products, and specifically how organizations now are using Microsoft Dynamics GP in conjunction with kind of 2 very specific products to provide one business solution from Microsoft. First of all, on the productivity side, it's always been our goal to use and integrate closely with the Office set of tools in terms of Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, etc. But there's sort of something a little bit new that's happening in the marketplace in that Microsoft Office 365 as a product, which is our online solution for not only our productivity tools but also for other things like Exchange and internal social through a product called Yammer, and even telephony through what's now called Skype for Business, which was formerly called Microsoft Link. All of those things combined really, along with your business applications and a cloud platform on Microsoft Azure, provides excuse me, one business solution for Microsoft. And if you haven't noticed, we've actually sort of stepped up our delivery of features and functionality to you, our customers. And in fact, I think it was a little over 2 years ago that we released Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013, and since then we've had a number of releases, and in fact in about the last year we've had kind of 4 releases that we've delivered to you, our customers. Ones that you may be familiar with: Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013, what we called R2, which was a set of features that introduced some really exciting things. In that release is where we introduced our workflow sort of being brought back into Microsoft Dynamics GP and no longer have a dependency on SharePoint. We also released an app for Office 365, and I'll just briefly show that today, but what it does is it surfaces information coming from Microsoft Dynamics GP in the Office productivity tools of Office 365, and specifically the SharePoint area of Office 365, which allows you to expose that information out to more people than are simply sort of within the 4 walls of the accounting, finance, or distribution areas. And then we also released another app which is, again, surfaces information, but what this does is it's actually an app that's not only in the Windows Store, but it's also in the Apple Store and the Google Store. And so what this allows you to do is, either on an Android device or iPad or a Windows device, It allows you, again, to surface the information that you've already built in Microsoft Dynamics GP through those SQL reporting services, charts, graphs, KPIs. It also allows you to surface management reporter reports and Excel documents into an easy-to-use app that you can then give and expose to executives or other people that might not have access to the Microsoft Dynamics GP solution. And then more recently, in December of this past year, we released Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015 that I'll talk sort of more in detail. And actually, since this slide was built, we actually had another release that I'll talk about also in this presentation. And really sort of all of these things coming together, we really think allows you to kind of reinvent productivity within your organization, where you are able to give access to more information to more people within the organization so that they can do their jobs better on a day-to-day basis. And so what are some of the things that we delivered in the release of Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015, which again was in December of this past year? Well, I'm just going to highlight a few of them that are sort of favorites of mine and favorites that that our customers have told us are things that allow them to increase productivity within their organization. First of all, for a little bit more of the system administrator, there's a really neat function called copy home page and area page. And so when you're setting up new users within the system, you can copy the home page and area page settings from other users and be able to set up users very quickly and give them access to the correct information according to their role within the organization. You can also navigate to management reporter reports directly inside of Microsoft Dynamics GP. So you don't have to go somewhere else. You don't have to go to either the Management Reporter Designer or the Management Reporter Web Viewer. You can just simply, within your Microsoft Dynamics GP application, access those management reports. I mentioned this one a little bit earlier, but again, we have the capability to download an app called Business Analyzer, and again, you can get that from all three of these stores, and it surfaces information that you've already created that are in Microsoft Dynamics GP right now. So any of the SQL reporting services, charts, graphs, and KPIs that you built can be surfaced there, along with management reporter content and Excel content in this very easy to use application. There's also some intercompany enhancements. So you're now able to view intercompany transactions with the intercompany journal entry inquiry, and you can void intercompany transactions, and it will create all of the entries in all necessary companies as a result. So again, sort of an ease of use type of thing for those companies that have that intercompany feature necessary within their organization. And this next one is basically any payment term that you can think of, we think we'll give you access to now. And so we've added all kinds of different sort of types of discounts and calculations, and there's also a calculate button on this window so that you can sort of preview what it is that you've entered in the payment terms area to make sure that it's doing what you thought it should do. And so as a result of the calculate button, you can quickly understand if what you've created is what you're looking for. We also had some feedback regarding the email address for historical documents, and so we've added historical payables remittances, historical receivable statements, historical sales documents, and historical purchase orders to our list. And what I also want to mention is that all of these types of features and functions that we add are very much driven by what customers are asking for. And so what you'll want to do is familiarize yourself with a tool on Customer Source called MS Connect. And that MS Connect tool allows you to see what other customers are asking for in our solution, that you can vote on existing features that people have already entered, and or enter in new ones that other customers will see and vote on. And we literally look at that list every 2 weeks to understand what our customers are asking for. And because of our more rapid release cycle, we're able to deliver those features quicker to you. And one of those features was being able to publish refreshable Excel reports. And what this does is, in our Smart List Designer, once you create and design an Excel report, you can publish that out, and it saves the data connection underneath it in such a way that if you, for instance, publish this and save this to a stored area on your network, other people could access this, click the refresh button, and they would have the latest information according to what you've saved in the Smart List Designer area. And you can also save those to Office 365 reports libraries and give access to that information to other people. And so it's a great way for those people that love to use Smart Lists to create that information and publish it, and the data connection is there so that you don't have to go create it again, send it to Excel, email it out, et cetera, et cetera. And I mentioned this also, but we have some out-of-the-box capabilities for Office 365 that came in the GP 2015 release that allows you to, we pre-populate for you some Excel-based dashboards that, that allow you to surface that information in Office 365, and then also allows you to give access to that information to other people. And so what I thought I'd do is just kind of quickly show you what that might look like. Okay. So what I thought I'd do is just show you the results of an Office 365 SharePoint site. What this is, again, is we help you sort of pre-populate information in Office 365. And again, what Office 365 is it's a whole host of things. And one of the things that happens to me when I go out and present to customers is I'll show some really fun things that are new in either our mail application, calendaring people. I'll show new functionality in Excel. And then invariably I get people that come up to me and say, hey, that looked really incredible and that could really help me out. And they ask me what version they need to be on, and I tell them what version they need to be on in order to get that solution. And unfortunately, they, respond with sort of the, well, I'm on Office 2007 or whatever the case may be. And one of the great things about Office 365 is, since it is both web and desktop applications and it's managed by Microsoft, is that you're always on the latest version of the software. And so not only do you have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, etc., but you also have access to mail, calendaring, people, a OneDrive, which is a great data storage area. For instance, I personally, in my day-to-day work, I don't save anything on my local machine anymore. It's all on my OneDrive. And as a result, I have access to all of my Excel, Word, PowerPoint documents that I use on an ongoing basis, no matter what machine I'm on, because I'm able to log in and get access to that information. So it's your cloud storage, along with SharePoint sites, tasks, and a great new business intelligence tool called Power BI, which unfortunately I won't show you today, but it is a great tool. So again, what we do is we pre-populate some information around sales, financial, inventory, etc., that allows you to expose that information to people that have access to the Office 365 application. So here's an example of some sales information that's pulling from Microsoft Dynamics GP. I can change the filter on this and get just the information that I want. I could drill down on a customer or on a salesperson, etc. But one of the things that allows us to be more mobile with this type of thing is the ability to store those reports here in Office 365. So what I've done in my documents area is when I go into documents, I have some month-end reports, and these reports then are things that I can give access to other people within the organization so that they can see these types of reports, and again, they don't have to have access to the Microsoft Dynamics GP system in order to do that. So what I've shown you here is just a simple chart that was created from Microsoft Dynamics GP information that I could pull up in Excel and modify it from here. But also one of the great things that I can do is now that it's stored in Office 365 is it's also something that's very mobile for me also. And in sort of that, you know, if I wanted to show it or gain access to that on my phone also, I could do that. And so what I'm going to try and do now is switch to even a third window. And I'm sure you're just going to love me for doing this. Okay, so you can see this large phone of mine. And so this is my Windows phone. And you can do this on other devices also, not just a Windows phone. But of course, I love my Windows phone. It allows me to see what's happening within the lives of the people that mean the most to me, which is my family. So I mentioned that we lived in Australia for 2 years. That was 12 years ago. So my daughter, who was in year 4 at the time, is now 24, and my sons are 20 and 19 now, and they were 6 and 5 when we moved there. But anyway, you don't want to hear about my family. What I'm going to show you is the Office Hub area. And again, this is available on other devices, not just Windows Phone. But as a result of storing those documents in the cloud in Office 365, and you can see my microchannel 2015 PowerPoint that I was working on earlier today. But also here's that cash position detail report that I mentioned earlier and showed you earlier, and let's just see the chart piece of that. So there's that that I can gain access to that right here on my phone. I had it in Office 365 also, and again, that information physically was originally resided in Microsoft Dynamics GP and now is displayed here on my mobile device. So hopefully what you've seen there is really again sort of the one business solution from Microsoft, being able to deliver information in a mobile way through a great product called Office 365, which also allows you to have all great access to other things in the application. So as I mentioned, we've been coming out with a release about every 6 months, and in fact we just had a release which added functionality to Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015. That release is physically called Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015 R2, and it had a number of feature enhancements and also one sort of big feature that I'll talk about a little bit later that I think you'll really, really like. But before I sort of go into what happened in this latest release, 2015 R2, which again just happened this month, I did want to talk about the workflow capabilities of Microsoft Dynamics GP. And so in GP 2013 R2, we introduced a completely new workflow system. So we removed the dependency of SharePoint, we improved the design experience, and now have completely integrated workflow in our system. So we not only provide out-of-the-box workflow types, but also developers could define and add their own if they wanted to do so. And what that looks like as far as what types of entities are currently available is in GP 2013 R2, we started with purchase order approvals, requisition approvals, time card and time sheet approvals, and then in GP 2015 release, which again was this past December, we added batch approvals for financial, sales, purchasing, payroll, which you don't have there in Australia, but also project expense report approvals. And in this latest release, we also added purchase invoice approvals. And so we've really rounded out the workflow capabilities for Dynamics GP. And what that looks like is sort of, first of all, when you define a workflow, you begin by identifying the type of workflow that you're creating. And those workflows are grouped by module and series, and they're linked to a window document type. So a workflow manager is assigned to the workflow type, and the manager has ultimate authority on any workflow associated with that type, and he or she can change and alter steps and has approval and completion authority over the steps of the workflow. So the next thing that you do is each workflow type can contain any number of workflow definitions. So you can sort of set up and test more than one workflow, although there's only one workflow that's active at any given time for the areas. But the workflows can be configured to send notifications to the originator on completed workflow actions. You can allow approvers to delegate their responsibilities. You can allow the originator to also be an approver, and you can ensure that at least one approver is always involved in the approving the workflow. And you can also use alternate final approvers, which acts as an intermediary before the workflow manager. So there's lots of flexibility in how you set it up. Also lots of flexibility in the types of steps that can be associated with workflow. So you can have an approval step in which an approver can choose to approve, reject, or delegate, or you can have a task. And in the task, that is if it's basically sort of something that needs to be completed that's sort of outside of Microsoft Dynamics GP. So you might have in your vendor approvals, you might have a task to do some research on that vendor. For customer approvals, you might have a credit process that you go through. And so those steps can be defined, and they can be nested beneath other steps in the hierarchy. In either case, a step is assigned to an Active Directory entity and may include a time limit for the action of completion also. And then that time limit can take into consideration the workflow calendar, which allows you to define work hours and work days over which the time limit should be incremented. There's just so many, it's so fully functioned. We really, customers have really been excited about the workflow capabilities. And so I mentioned Active Directory entities, and the reason for that is not all people within the workflow process are necessarily a user within Microsoft Dynamics GP. And so you can actually assign it to people that don't even touch Microsoft Dynamics GP. They can do their workflow approvals through email notifications, and that information gets updated inside of Microsoft Dynamics GP. And we talked about workflow notifications on completed actions. This window allows you to specify which individual workflow action should provide a completion notification. And these notifications are also sort of templatable, and it can be carbon copied to one or more Active Directory entities. So again, it's very fully functional. When you get to the actual transaction entry area, here's an example of how a workflow assignment can be presented. Because a workflow type has been configured for this window, we have a workflow group in the window, or excuse me, in the ribbon, and the group displays those actions available specifically to the user for interacting with workflow. And additionally, just below the ribbon, a workflow info bar is available, which shows the current workflow status of the document. If there's more than one pending step, buttons will appear, and that will allow them to scroll through the pending workflow. So again, very fully functional, and there's full history also on the workflow capabilities here, and so you can see the full history of approvals and who completed the tasks, time, date, stamps, etc. So again, a huge investment for us to have that. There's also in navigation lists now, you can use the navigation list area to see all of your notifications, you as an individual, and it allows you to manage and monitor all of the notifications that you're getting from the workflow process. Workflow can be enabled with or without email. If you do enable email notifications for workflow, you can also choose to allow users the ability to take workflow actions from links within that email. And again, so as a result of that, an approver does not have to be someone who's set up inside of Microsoft Dynamics GP. There's also out-of-office delegations, and so if a user is assigned various workflow tasks, they can be out of office and they can use this delegation window to delegate their workflow tasks to others. And again, that can be time-based. So for instance, if you're out of the office for a week, you can set it up that someone else within the organization gets your workflow delegations. So lots of enhancements to obviously our workflow capabilities, and I know that many of you are probably very excited about that and want to work with Microchannel on what that means to your business. As I mentioned, we also did a release just this month, and there's some fun things in that release. Here you can see a list of those. I mentioned in the bottom right-hand corner we have AP invoice workflow approval now. That was in this particular release. And also we added the capabilities to have documents attached to the workflow process. And so what that allows you to do then, again, if you're using email notification, you could attach something to the workflow, and that would show up in the email process, for instance, purchase order, so that the person approving it in just email could actually see the entire purchase order document and understand what's happening on that document. And then that flows through and is maintained in the history of the workflow process also. We've got some fun things happening in our smart list areas. I know it sounds simple, but one of the highest rated features from our customers was the ability to display debits and then credits on smart lists in the smart list area instead of I think it was actually the opposite or something like that. I can't remember how we displayed them, but again, it's something that the customers voted on, and so we put it in the solution. There's some things, again, with smart lists that allow you to create SQL views in the designer. And then at the very top, there's a new bit of feature that's called all-in-one document viewer, specifically for purchasing. I'll kind of show you what that means in just a little bit. So again, in that business intelligence area, display debits before credits, and again, this was a top suggestion. This feature moves the debit column to display before the credit column by default, and this applies to smart lists and Excel reports, as well as database tables and views on which the reports are based. So smart list visibility now, when you create a new smart list favorite, the user has the option to select to whom the smart list favorite will be visible. So this is great for sort of having a clean list of smart lists instead of having everything available to everyone. You can choose what's visible to people within the organization. So you can say, hey, it's system-wide, or it's company-wide, or it's by user class, or it's by a specific user ID. And so, again, hopefully what that means is it allows you to potentially clean up when people are adding new smart lists on an ongoing basis. And this was one that I mentioned earlier, but a user can submit smart list designer queries to workflow to create SQL views within the company database. And so what that then does is there's an approver to have those SQL views be within the company database, but a user could create and submit their smart list designer queries for the creation of SQL views. In the distribution area, there's a new SQL reporting services report to have a cutoff date based on transaction date or GL post date. Again, just a usability thing for our customers. And then the one that I'm sort of most excited about is what's called all-in-one document view. And this is sort of hard to explain via this window, but really think of it this way. Right now in the purchasing area, there are multiple kind of query places to go see documents and the relationship of those documents. And so instead of that now, there's one place that you can go. You can select a specific purchase order and see just the documents that that apply to that particular purchase order, and then sort of be able to drill down and quickly understand sort of the flow of what happened with that purchase order. And you can gain access to this through vendor maintenance or through many of the purchase inquiry windows along with navigation lists and the home page. And so we're looking at this for other areas also, not just purchase order. And so we'd really be interested in having your feedback on sort of where else we should have this all-in-one document view kind of thought for other areas within the solution. And so I'm sure there's some posts already out there in MS Connect asking for different areas for the all-in-one document view, and we'd really love to have your feedback on that. Just a few things in the financial area. So this feature provides the option to have cash receipts directly update the checkbook balance without the need to manually post the cash receipt deposit in BankRec. It was previously available in Analytical Accounting, and now it's expanded the option to companies not using Analytical Accounting, so it's also sort of for everywhere. We did do some additional features for Analytical Accounting also in this latest release. So this feature provides improvements to Smart Lists and Excel reports for Analytical Accounting. Expansion of the amount information available to be included, and we also improved the way that the Analytical Accounting dimension code information displays in lists, and so enhancements there. In the payables area, I mentioned this before, but we added payables transaction approval workflow. So that's in this latest release, along with a visual indicator for customer credit limit. So the existing process for an existing credit limit password will still be asked when entering a line item or saving the transaction, but this actually sort of pops up and gives you that visual indicator sort of before you get to that point. Along with, we combined open and history inquiries, so you can view those open and historical information in the same window. Again, so there's some more ease of use types of things. In the system area in this release, we have support for additional user type, which is called a SelfService User, and that allows it allows to actually give you access to GP to more people at a lower cost. And for those things like purchase order approvals, requisitions, etc., you no longer need what used to be called a limited user license, or is still called a limited user license, but we have actually a lower priced self-server user license for people that need even more sort of limited access to Microsoft Dynamics GP. We also added a feature called Enable Email and Report Options. And so the print options for purchase orders currently only supported email for blank document formats. This feature will support email for any document format for all purchase order documents. And it's also supported when printing from the transaction window, navigation lists, and print purchase order document windows. I sort of mentioned this one previously, but we added document attachments to our workflow process. So again, you can have documents that are attached to the workflow. People that are approving it can see it in the email notification, and also it follows the workflow, and you can view that in the workflow history of that also. I know this was kind of really fast, but there's really so much. And again, just to reiterate, we're releasing new features and functionality every 6 to 9 months. This next release, sort of after GP 2015 R2, we're sort of just calling it R3. It will be in the first half of calendar 2016, and in fact I anticipate it'll show up around the March timeframe of 2016. And sort of along with a whole set of features, what we're really excited about is the future of our web client for that release. And we actually demonstrated this at Convergence, our customer conference recently, which was in March. But basically, any device, any browser, you will be able to access Microsoft Dynamics GP full full client capabilities. And so, what that means is if you want to do it on an iPad, you can access Microsoft Dynamics GP on an iPad. If you want to do it on an Android device with Chrome, you can do that, and we would just prefer that you do it on a Microsoft device, but knowing that there are other devices out there, we want to make sure that you have the options to do that also. And so that's the really big thing, and there's also a set of features that we're working on for that release. But again, that will come in the in sort of the first half of calendar 2016. So again, I know that was a lot of information. Hopefully what I did is showed you a couple of ways that Microsoft Dynamics GP is, along with Microsoft Office 365 and in the cloud, really provides you kind of one business solution from Microsoft, and that there's a very strong roadmap that has already been delivered on and is being delivered on in sort of a 6 to 9 month type of iteration.